Hey guys! So I've had a couple of requests to do a video on my watercolors, so here they all are. Um, Basically, I wanted to go over some of the brands that I have, the pros and cons to each one, and give a couple of examples of what I've painted using them. So bear with me because to get everything in shot, I have to put my camera up really high. So you're gonna have to see my like floating finger every once in a while to actually point to what I need. So basically, I'll start over here. This is the Daniel Smith watercolor palette that I created for myself. It's using all of the tubes that are up here and also down here. Daniel Smith is a Seattle brand. It's a US brand. They only sell them in tubes, from my understanding. I've never seen a palette in any art store I've been in. So I kind of just made my own. The benefits to that is basically that you can create a palette using the colors that you'll most use in your painting, which is really great because I find that whenever I buy a palette, I only use about 80% of it because there's just some colors that I don't find particularly useful for my benefits. So the good thing is that you can kind of create your own, figure out what you need, and then that's my little guy right there. And the downside to that is that each tube costs anywhere from I think $15 to like $30 depending on which series it is. So it can be quite an expensive brand to kind of get invested in, but I do have to say that they do have some of the most vibrant and opaque colors that you can find out there, and also the tubes will last you for quite a while. I think like you could probably get a solid couple of years out of each tube that you use depending on just how much watercolor work that you actually do. So I do really enjoy them. I do find that I use the Daniel Smith watercolors not very often on their own, but as a complement to other palettes that I'm currently using, because the colors that I picked out of the Daniel Smith brand are the ones that I'm just not finding in other palettes. So yeah, there's pros and cons to that one. I really like them. It's probably my, I want to say, second favorite brand that I've ever tried. So they're definitely up there in some of the best that you can find, and I find them at most like specialty art stores. That's where I'm finding those out there. Then let's see, where's my hand again? Down here. This is my latest palette. I just got it a couple months ago on sale. I've been waiting very patiently for my local art store to have an inventory sale, and I finally snagged this palette that I've been kind of dreaming about for quite a while. It's a Mung Yo watercolor palette, and they came in I think 3 different sizes. This is the smallest one. I really wanted the smallest because I find I do most of my watercolor work on the go. I just need something that I can just chuck into my bag and get out there and create things with. So it was really great for that because it's really small. It's roughly the size of my hand, and I can just slip it into my purse and get going. And the other thing I loved about it is, as I mentioned before, I don't use a lot of like earthy tones. I don't use browns very often. I much prefer very bright, very vibrant colors. So it was really great because it was the one that I found that had the most like bright greens, yellows, oranges, reds, blues, all that kind of thing, and not as many like taupe and burnt sienna and all that kind of stuff because I just don't use those very often. So yeah, so I really loved it. I've been really enjoying it so far. It's very similar to the Cotman set, which is this guy up here. So might as well talk about that one. This is the Windsor Newton Cotman edition watercolor palette. I think it's got 45 colors, and they're half pans, and 100% my absolute favorite brand to work with. Almost all of my art supplies are Windsor Newton. I love the brand. I should mention at this point, absolutely none of this is sponsored. No one's paying me to say this. I am not famous enough to be able to land any sponsorships, so all of this is my own opinion. But anyway, the Windsor Newton watercolor set is my absolute favorite because it just gives you such a variety of colors, and it's got amazing translucency. It's got so many great options. You can mix the colors. It's fantastic. And the only downside to it is that the palette is actually quite large. So it's a lot harder to just chuck into your backpack and get going with, which again is what I do frequently. So basically the times I use that one the most frequently is when I am painting at home. And when I just have a really big painting I want to get working on. It's got such a great variation of colors. It's just absolutely perfect. So love it. Absolute favorite. What's down here? This is the Sakura Koi palette, and I think it's a Japanese brand, but I think they have a company in America that's like a sister company. And I got it for my birthday this year, and I I like it. It's really good. It's very different from other watercolor sets I've tried before. It's a lot more opaque. It's almost verging on gouache paint as opposed to watercolor. And that can have some benefits and some drawbacks because you don't have the same level of translucency that you get with other brands and other watercolor palettes. But that can also work in your favor when you need something that's just a little bit more, that can give you a lot more coverage than other watercolor palettes. So I enjoy it. It definitely took me a while to kind of figure out what it's best for. And now that I have a good handle on that, it's really, really great for what I use it for. And it also gives you a really good arrangement of color. And in terms of how much it cost, I think it was like $40. I got it for my birthday, so I don't actually know. But you get a decent selection of colors, and yeah, it's about $40 for that palette. And then finally, this guy up here. So that is the Fine Tech Pearlescent palette. And it's all about shimmer and glitter and like shininess, basically. And I use that one, I don't use that one on its own very often. It looks really great on black paper, which I'll show you in just a moment, but I use it most frequently as an addition to other paintings that I'm working on, like just when you need a little bit of shimmer, like if you're painting a galaxy, or if you need just a tiny bit of something a little bit out of the ordinary for a regular painting, I'll use it for that. So I don't use it very often, but when I do, I find that it's very, very good quality, absolutely wonderful shimmery colors, very opaque as well when you can add enough water into it. So anyway, I'll go through a couple of my journals and show you some examples of all of these. There you go. You love these little sharks. It's fantastic. Okay, let's do Daniel Smith first. So when I first got my Daniel Smith watercolors, this is the first page I made with them. And as you can see, lots of just vibrant colors, really, really beautiful tones. I think I used 3 different colors for this one. And I use the Daniel Smiths very frequently in other paintings as a complement to more colors, because the ones that I have picked out in that palette are colors that I can't seem to find in any other palette. So that's kind of what I use it most frequently for. Let's go, what's over here? So this was the Sakura Koi palette. This is my test page for that one, just to see how it would work. And again, a lot more opaque than other palettes that I've tried before. So really great for that. And then this one is the Windsor Newton Cotman set, this guy right here. So you can get a real good sense of the variation of colors that you can get from that one. And I think I only used like half a palette for that. So, all right, next up, I'll show you the pearlescent palette because that one's always very interesting. So this is a black paper sketchbook. You can just see how much shimmer you can get out of that. So I used it a couple times in this one, just to test it out and see how I like it. And yeah, very opaque. Oops, opaque, considering. This was actually Daniel Smith and the pearlescent palette. So some of the pink here is all the Daniel Smiths over here. All right, so next up, let's see what I've got in here. Come on. I think I just did this painting a couple days ago, and I used primarily the Cotman set with the Daniel Smiths, and I don't know if you can see, but the doorway, this part here, I added a little bit of that pearlescent as well. So this is what I do most frequently. When I have the time to really sit down and get into it, I have a tendency to mix up everything that I have all together. So I don't really focus on one palette unless I'm in a place where I can't really take all of them with me. So when I'm on the go and I just have like one little palette to take with me, then, you know, it is what it is and that's what I use. But a lot of the time when I really have time to sit down and get to painting, I'll use all of them at once. And this is actually my test page for the Mung Yo palette, this one right here. I just did this a couple days ago. And really beautiful, very translucent, really great blending. Really like that set. So it's definitely one of my favorites for taking with me on the go. I do recommend it. And they do have larger sizes as well. I just picked the smallest one because I needed something to fit into my bag. this one here. This is the Sakura palette again. And again, you can see this is toned paper, so it's naturally this color. And the Sakura watercolors work really well on this toned paper. I absolutely love it with toned paper. So this is probably my favorite thing to use the Sakura Koi watercolors with, because you can get a really beautiful color variation. It's very opaque. You don't have to use that much to get a really solid color. And I think this is the last page I have an example for. This I drew onto just white paper and then pasted in here, and this was using, again, the Mung Yo palette right here. So again, lots of color variation, and I think I added a couple of Cotman watercolors as well, but not a lot. It was mostly to test this guy out. So yeah. So yeah, those are all of the brands that I'm currently using. The only watercolors that I've ever not particularly enjoyed were the ones you can get from like Michael's, and they are really, really cheap. They feel very chalky. They sort of rub off very easily. They are not my favorites, and usually in the past I've tried them a couple times and ended up giving them away because I need the better quality ones to get the full use out of watercolors. That's what I find works best for me. But it really is all about what you use your watercolors for. If you're just using them to make backgrounds for your pages, definitely go for the cheaper set, because you don't want to pay a lot of money to use them, for something that's not, I don't know what the best way to say it, but basically if you want to get really into watercolor painting, if you want to know the full capabilities of these paints, definitely go for something that's kind of in the medium range so you can test out just what you can create with them. So again, this is the Daniel Smith watercolors. I wouldn't suggest those as like your first try. I would definitely go for something like the Mung Yo palette, or even the Cotman set, but in a smaller size perhaps. And then the rest, I would say you can add those on. The Sakura Koi watercolors, the only reason I don't suggest those for your first time or if you're just starting out is just because they do behave a little bit differently from regular watercolors. But I do think it's a fairly decent palette for what it is. So yes, so that is my video on my watercolor palettes. If you have any questions, if you have a brand that you've used that you really enjoy, hit me up in the comments, because I'm always on the lookout, and whenever my art store has a sale, I'm always like the first one there to like try to get the best deals. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and see you next time.